Your phone doesn't ring much anymore. Not in a dramatic way. The contacts are still there. The old names. The people who would technically still pick up if you called. But the easy back and forth other people seem to live inside has thinned out for you, year by year, and you've started to notice the quiet around you. You've started to suspect something is wrong with you, that you missed a step everyone else got. You didn't. What you're sitting inside is the side effect of 5 specific traits. From the outside, they look like flaws. From the inside, they're building you something most people with crowded calendars will never get to live in. In the next few minutes, you'll recognize every one of them in yourself, and you'll understand, maybe for the first time, why your life looks the way it does. The first trait is a kind of attention most people don't have the bandwidth for. Someone like this notices too much. Not in the parlor trick sense of reading body language for sport, in the slower, more exhausting sense. The half-second pause before an answer, the micro-expression that flickered when a name came up, the way a friend's laugh changed when their partner walked into the room. Psychologists call this sensory processing sensitivity. In plain words, the nervous system takes in more information per minute than most people's. And it does this whether you want it to or not. That kind of attention is a beautiful thing in small doses and a heavy thing in groups. 5 hours at a crowded gathering doesn't just tire this person out. It drains the same fuel everyone else uses, only faster and from a deeper tank. So they begin, almost without choosing, to protect that tank. They keep the circle small because the circle is already louder for them than it is for anyone else in the room. The second trait looks like coldness from the outside and feels like honesty from the inside. A quiet inability to enjoy fake closeness. A lot of social life runs on a kind of low-grade pretending. Polite enthusiasm for plans you don't really want. Shared jokes about things you don't actually find funny. Performances of intimacy with people who haven't earned it yet. This person can do those things technically. They just can't do them for long without something in their chest beginning to ache. The price of pretending is higher for them than the social reward, and the math, after a while, stops penciling out. The third trait is an unusually strong internal sense of who they are. Most people, without realizing it, use their social circle as a kind of mirror. Every conversation a small confirmation that they exist, that they're funny, that they matter. Take the mirror away and something in them starts to wobble. They feel uncertain in their own skin. They reach for the phone to fix it. This person figured out, somewhere along the way, that they could exist without the mirror. They don't need a group around them to feel real. So when the mirror thinned, when friendships drifted, when the calendar emptied out, they didn't panic. They just kept being themselves in a quieter room. That inner steadiness changes everything about how they move through social life. They don't chase. They don't perform. They don't reshape themselves to keep someone interested. And because they don't, a certain kind of friendship, the kind that needed them to keep performing, doesn't survive around them. It drifts off. They watch it drift and feel less lost than people would expect. The fourth trait is a low tolerance for shallow conflict. Most friendships, especially the wider, looser kind, require a certain amount of small navigation. Someone says a thing that lands wrong. A group dynamic gets tense over something trivial. People talk about other people in ways that everyone knows aren't quite fair. The expected move is to ride it out, laugh, smooth it, look the other way, stay liked. Someone like this can't quite do the smoothing. Not because they're rigid. Because the smoothing requires a kind of going along that costs them more than it costs the people around them. They drift away from groups where the friendships seem to require constant management. They stop showing up to gatherings where the air has gotten subtly mean. They don't make a scene about it. They just stop arriving. The group barely notices the absence, which is part of how this person knew, all along, that the place wasn't holding them anyway. These 4 traits together do something to a life that nobody warned them about. They quietly raise the floor of what counts as a real friendship. And once that floor is raised, it cannot be lowered again. Most of what used to pass as connection no longer registers in their chest the same way. The 5th trait is the one that surprises people the most. They actually like being alone. Not as a recovery from being with others, as a state in itself. There's a particular pleasure they get from a long evening with no plans, the kind of evening other people would call empty. A walk taken without a phone, a meal eaten in silence. A whole Saturday with no one in it but their own thoughts. They didn't choose this taste. It grew in them slowly, the way a taste for unsweetened tea grows. Once you have it, the sweet version starts to feel like too much. The crowded weekends other people post about don't make them jealous. If anything, they feel a small quiet relief that they aren't inside one. This is the trait almost nobody admits to, because the culture has decided that wanting to be alone is something only sad or broken people want. It isn't. Some of the most settled people on earth feel a deep, almost embarrassing aliveness inside their own solitude, and they spend years pretending otherwise so the people around them don't worry. So that's the 5. The attention that takes in too much. The body that won't perform closeness it doesn't feel. The inner sense of self that doesn't need a mirror. The refusal to manage friendships that have gone subtly false. And the quiet, almost unspeakable love of being alone. These traits don't arrive separately. They arrive together. And when they arrive in the same person, that person tends to end up with a life that looks small from the outside and feels, on the inside, like one of the more honest lives a human being can build. The trap waiting for someone with all 5 is to confuse a thinner social life with a failed one. On hard days, the ones where a small worry catches you sideways, where you scroll past a photo of strangers laughing in a kitchen, the old story comes back. The story that says you should have more people. That something is wrong with the way you're built. That the quiet around you is a verdict and not a result. It isn't a verdict, it's a result. There's a difference, and the difference matters. But the trap is real. If you sit with the thin social life as failure story long enough, you can start reaching for connection the wrong way, settling for people who don't earn it, saying yes to plans that are going to drain you, trying to assemble a wider circle out of guilt rather than desire. None of it works. The traits don't go away. They just make you tired and a little ashamed of being tired. If this is you, the way through isn't to grow your circle, it's to honor the one you have. The 2 or 3 people who actually understand you are worth 100 who would only ever understand the surface. Treat them that way. Call them when you have nothing to say. Show up for them in the small specific ways you're capable of. The connections you have are already deeper than most of what the world calls friendship. They just look smaller because there are fewer of them. The other thing worth knowing is this: you don't have to defend the size of your life to anyone. Not to family, not to coworkers, not to the part of yourself that occasionally panics on a Sunday afternoon. The 5 traits underneath your quiet aren't deficits being mistaken for virtues. They're a real and specific kind of inner equipment, and most of the people who don't have it spend their lives quietly wishing they did, without quite knowing what to call the thing they're missing. You'd notice it if it left. The noticing too much, the refusal to fake intimacy, the sense of yourself that doesn't depend on being witnessed. The walking away from groups that have gone false, the love of your own company. If any of those went out tomorrow, the version of you left behind would be lighter on paper and quieter in the chest in a way you wouldn't recognize. Don't let anyone, including yourself, talk you into trading them for a fuller calendar. The quiet you're sitting inside tonight isn't a sign of what you missed. It's the room your real life has been growing in this whole time. Almost nobody around you has one. You do. If any of this met you somewhere quiet, leave a comment and consider subscribing. There will be more like it.